Now is David Wood. David happens to have done the voiceover for a new book that's out called Hail to the Chief. It is a political thriller. David, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you, Mark?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us today. I should mention that David is the program director, and he works for our sister station over in Indianapolis at WIBC.
That's right.
That's where those great pipes come from, because you've been in the radio business all these years.
No, that's why I'm in management. I wouldn't be good on the air.
Oh, nonsense. I was reading about this book, Hail to the Chief, and this sounds like exactly the kind of book that I enjoy reading. I mean, it's sort of a political thriller. You've got a president who gets elected, the first female president, breaks the glass ceiling. Oh, things that could have been.
Yep.
But fortunately didn't. And she ends up dying in office? Is that what happened?
No, she doesn't die. That's what makes the whole thing interesting. First, it's like I told the authors, it's like, you guys are incredible because you predicted that Hillary would not be the first woman president.
That's right.
And they actually make a Trump mention in the book, and it works out the way they did it. It wouldn't matter whether he won or lost, because it kind of leaves it open for either way. But they obviously predicted she wouldn't be in. But that's the interesting thing about the 20th Amendment, is that it really, if you read it, it's a little murky about what would happen if a president-elect was incapacitated before they were sworn in. Not if they died. If they did, actually, the 20th Amendment covers it, and the vice president-elect would become would become the president. But in the case of incapacitation, they don't really address it. And in this case, she had a brain aneurysm.
Oh, wow. So this is the book, I should mention, is written by John Leslie and Carrie Winfrey, and it's available on Amazon, Amazon.com. It's called Hail to the Chief, which is just it looks like a great book. Now, you did the audio narration on this, correct? Right.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's one of those happy accident things where I do some voice work, in addition to my radio job, and I read the audition for it and was so interested in what they call the side, the piece that they use for the audition, that I was like, well, I want to read the whole book. Maybe I'll just audition and see if they'll give me a free book.
Yeah, sure.
And next thing I know, I hear from them, and it's like, hey, we'd like you to read our book. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And honestly, I couldn't put it down. I got it on a Saturday morning, and I literally read the whole thing. By midnight that night, I stayed up late to finish reading it because I couldn't put it down.
Yeah, that's the curse of my wife's curse too. If I get my head stuck in a new book, and she can't find me, she knows I've tucked away in some corner in the house, and my head's buried in whatever book that I'm reading. So,
and I did the same thing you did. I had to blow it up. So.
I know. Thank you. I that's normal. Now, frankly, always been a big fan of these audiobooks. My wife and I used to we'd get them on an Audible device or something, and we'd listen on long trips, or if you're having to drive somewhere by yourself, or even if you've got a long commute, it's really cool just to have something you can pop in the iPod or into the stereo and listen to. What was the challenge for you? Had you done anything like this before?
No. Other than that, I also do some acting on the side, so It kind of married the two things that I kind of do for avocation on the side, and so I think that the biggest challenge was actually, doing dialogue where you're doing more than one voice. And in audiobooks, I think it's a lot like television in that, you want to be kind of understated. You don't want to do a real over-the-top character where you're sounding like a caricature. And that was probably the biggest challenge in doing it. But like I said, the content was just so fascinating that I loved it.
Sure. Well, here's what I wanted to ask you, because whenever I've listened to one of those books, and I'm wondering about the person who's actually doing the voiceover, on some of the books, and this is more dramatic when it's somebody who's supposed to be British or Australian or something. The author would actually read those parts of the book in that accent. So what do you do in this book when you come to a part where there's a female speaking or a man speaking? Is it really you're just reading the book out loud, or are you trying to put emphasis into the characters? How do you do that?
Well, if you think about it like reading to your kids or something,
right.
Because like I'd read a Dr. Seuss book, and if I didn't do all the voices, my kids would be going, "Dad, you're not doing the voices." But even then, you wouldn't go into like a female part and read it in falsetto. So what you do is you put a little more air behind it, and try and and sometimes it's just speech patterns. Women tend to talk a little faster than men, and same thing if you were doing a Southern accent, you wouldn't put on this big thing, but you might just put a little bit of a draw in something.
Sure.
And kind of hint at it. And you know what? And there are sometimes it's like if I know of people, as I've done a lot of research on other audiobook narrators, it's like if they just couldn't do an accent, they just wouldn't do it. But I didn't have to do any in this particular book. Now, the book that I just found out was actually just hit Audible today. I did have to do several different accents, and I just went to YouTube and found
yeah. That's great. That would be a great challenge, and I can't wait to read the book. It's called "Hail to the Chief." John Leslie and Kerry Winfrey have done the written book, and then our guest David Wood has actually done the voiceover on the Audible version of it. Now, is that available just through Audible? Because I see there's an Audible option on Amazon.
Yeah, it's available through Audible, Amazon, which actually owns Audible, and it's also available on iTunes too.
Excellent. All right. Well, David, listen, thanks for joining us today. That's a good stocking stuffer idea for someone. And you tell my buddy Tony Katz that I'm going to have to come to Indianapolis and smoke a cigar with him one of these days.
All right. We'll all meet up then.
Awesome. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks. I appreciate it. David Wood there.